Born at 2nd and South, 1947. I was born, my grandfather had a store, and we lived on top of the store. I went to Lamberton the first year it was open, since it was built to accommodate all the baby boomers. When I was in first grade, the classes were very, very crowded. We were the baby boomers, and the teacher was completely overwhelmed. There must have been 40 5-and-a-half-year-olds, 6-year-olds in the class. And I came in knowing how to read, and she realized that and gave me a child who didn't know how to read and said, "Could you please teach him to read?" And I looked around the room, and there was a shopping bag, and it said he was very nervous to be embarrassed by not knowing how to read and given to a girl who did know how to read. There was a shopping bag in the classroom that said Wanamaker's. I pointed to the bag and I said to him, "Can you read that?" He said, "Well, that says Wanamaker's." I said, "See, you know how to read." And he lit up and he felt better about learning how to read. And I said, "Oh, that was fun. I shared something. I shared reading."
I was born in 1944 and remember the big radio in the living room and the 10-inch television. So it's Philadelphia. It's a wonderful, wonderful town. What shaped my dedication to seniors was the people that I knew who were twinkly-eyed, curious, warm and wonderful people. And I guess when you're privileged enough to be around enough people like that, my own mother for one, you think, well, that's when you're really at your greatest.
I was born in Puerto Rico. I was in Puerto Rico until I was like close to 18 years old. I started with an organization, I don't remember the name of it, and we started picketing the landlords and going to court with the tenants and advocating for the tenants' rights. Number one, that they needed to repair the apartments, put them in conditions, and we forced the courts to take over the apartments and do the repairs with the rental that they collected instead of giving it to the landlords. And we gave the landlords the opportunity to take back their apartments once everything was taken care of. And we went to court and the judge said, well, the repairs have been done and now you could start paying rent and the landlord could start collecting the rent.
I was born in 1943, originally from North Philadelphia. You know, it was wonderful. It was a neighborhood based, and all the neighbors knew each other. That's one of those that adage where a neighborhood or community raises a child, right? Where that's what the environment was. You know, we had mothers throughout the neighborhood, throughout the block. The block was so close. And it was at any given time, you can walk into one house and have dinner and walk into another house, you know, and look at TV. And of course, all the children played together. The school was only, the elementary school was a block away. My mother loved piano. She wanted me to take piano. So at 6 years old, I started to play piano. And of course, music was the mainstay in our churches. So she got the music teacher, and I was very, very lucky. Because a lot of times in the churches, the music is folk-based. So whatever they hear, whatever the congregational songs were, the pianist would play it. This particular pianist in our church, her name Juanita Bradley, could also read music and had a strong base in theory. So she used to come over to the house, and my mother had to come over to teach me piano, and I hated it. I used to run behind the chairs and hide all types of things when I would play the piano. If I made a mistake, you know, that was corporal punishment. It wasn't a crime then, so I would get spanked on the fingers, you know, and I just hated it. But one of the things that happened during that period is that I learned a lot of theory at an early age. And my mother drilled me every day, you know, about the sharps and flats and the value of notes every day. So if I didn't learn how to play a song, at least I knew the information behind it.
Yeah, I grew up in Southwest Philadelphia. I was born in 1952 in a house with 3 bedrooms and 11 people. So and I was 6th of 8, so that's my entire career has been based on the fact I've been trying to get people to pay attention to me. For some reason, and I don't, you know, even when I was very, very young, I remember seeing on television stories about the civil rights struggle and later the early Vietnam War stuff, and I always identified with the protesters. I think a lot of that has to do, believe it or not, with a TV show that was on in the early '60s called East Side, West Side. It starred George C. Scott. And I always remembered this show. He played a social worker, and it was at that point I decided I wanted to be like him. I was probably 10 when that happened. And I don't know what turned me on about that, but as a result, I never had any real inclination to get into business. It was always about some kind of community service or social service context that I wanted to be in.
I had 4 children, and then when the youngest was 2, I decided to go to law school, and I went to Temple Night School, and I graduated from Temple Night School. And it was interesting, in those days, before you were admitted to the bar, you had to go through an ethics committee. And my ethics committee consisted of 3 men from Delaware County. And I didn't pass the first time because they thought there had to be something wrong with, this was in 1967. They thought there had to be something wrong with me because how could I go to law school and have 4 children and, you know, I couldn't be a straight arrow. So I flunked the first time, and then then another committee was formed, and the second committee was more understanding. But those were the days when there were practically no women lawyers.
Where I think we have to look is not only where we put resources through advocacy and policy, but where we put resources because this is where we care, not because someone is making us or apportioning it. If we really realize that we're all going to be old, then why wouldn't you? It's in your own self-interest.
The ability not to feel self while delivering content and skills, the ability to step out of who I am, who my background is, and just kind of melt in with the class and figure out ways to take the content. I'm a secondary school teacher, so I'm not teaching skills so much. To take the content and make it relevant to every single one of the kids in the class.
Create an environment so young people, whether in visual arts or in performing arts, can be creative and find their own voices.
After I would give a speech, the fellow lawyers would line up to talk to me, and what they were talking about is not their wives, but their daughters, the future of their daughters. And I found that very, very telling, that they were interested in me because they saw in me what they wanted for the next generation.
We made the system work for people. We used the rules of the system to defeat the system that was trying to not deal with people with AIDS.
I help everybody in my community that need help. I help I try to help all the young people that were into doing things that were illegal and being together with all the gangbangings and this and that. I try to get them to go to school every day, to have everything that they needed. I work with the parents. My mother always did very good for people. If people need a favor and you are able to do the favor, and you should do the favor. She said that you are judged by how you behave towards others than how you behave with yourself.
What's the answer to changing the face of aging? I think it starts with each one of us. I think when you say we're congratulating people because they're over age 60, that's a plus. And each time it reinforces. I think if we start to build the self-dignity, and that was why the technology came to me, because if you stop feeling embarrassed about not understanding and have an easier way of understanding, that's a good thing.
How would I like to be remembered? Okay, if as someone who wanted to share their love for the arts, right, to young people, to everybody, and have those people feel the same passion, the same love I feel about it. If I can portray that to people, I think I want to be remembered in that vein.
I was asked the other day by a friend of mine as a teenager what my advice was to him was, as because he's graduating from college, not graduating from high school, and probably not going to college. And he said, what's my advice to him? And I was in an eloquent mood, so I said, my advice to you is think things are possible. I like to believe that in most of my life, I've been able to think things are possible and show that they were.